just ask you before we move on to John Lewis and high street shoplifting, which you were talking about earlier on, is a real integral part, I suppose, of keeping the economy moving, making sure that people can go to the shops and buy things as opposed to going to the shops fearing that they're going to be overrun by gangs of youths looting the place. Let's just talk about the, I think, fairly unprecedented move by Suella Braverman to say that she wants to ban these XL bully dogs. I mean, do you think she can ban them?
Well, I remember, and I think you do too, Mike, previous Home Secretaries 20, 25 years ago, when there was a similar, what we call devil dog outbreak at the time, and Home Secretaries coming out, huge public pressure and saying these dogs must be banned. And they did rush through a Dangerous Dogs Act at the time, which kind of backfired because it went too far in the eyes of most people. And there's always a danger, isn't there, of rushing to law too quickly without thinking about it. Suella Braverman is a Home Secretary with a mission. She's very, very clearly out to position herself as on the side of the people and common sense, and she won't stand for nonsense. What I do think is these particular dogs, this particular breed, is obviously something which is out of control, and there are laws which are there to prevent owners from seeking to buy and breed such dogs, and I think that there will very quickly be an answer found to her request. For her, though, to put her name to this and say, I'm going to stamp this breed out, is quite a big call, because for a politician to make a pledge like that and then not to be able to deliver it weakens their authority, and there's a part of me which wishes that she be a little bit more measured before she knows she can actually deliver.
Well, I mean, this is unfortunately becoming the hallmark of this particular government. They're saying a lot of things, but they're not really doing an awful lot, which again takes us back to kind of Trevor Kavanagh's point. You know, if you say you're going to do something, for heaven's sake, do it. Don't then say, oh, actually, we're not sure we can do it now, some months later, as Rishi Sunak has done a couple of times.
Well, and that's the result, Mike, of the fact that we're in this beginning of this electoral cycle where they feel that the headlines are driving everything, and they need to be responsive. They try to be proactive and to try and lead the conversation, and to say to your listeners, your viewers, we're on your side. Look at the amazing. This is where our hearts lie. This is what we stand for. Hoping that somewhere down the line, either we forget that they've made a pledge, or the pledge doesn't seem that important, or there's enough distance between making the pledge and us sort of saying, hey, what happened to that pledge? That by then they've won the election and they've got themselves back into power. That's always the difficulty in populist politics, is we can all say things, it's dead easy, but actually to deliver them in government requires huge amounts of work, dedication, focus, attention to detail, and also making sure the civil service is prepared to deliver on the policies that you promised. I
mean, I reckon I've got more done sitting here for the last few years than some of the Tory party policies have actually worked out, but that's another story. So I wouldn't want to be blowing my own trumpet at all, that would be wrong. But let's talk finally about the supermarket problem, the high street problem in this country, which is a sort of several-fold, I suppose. One, an awful lot of shops finding it difficult to make a living, partly because of the increased cost of doing so through, business rates and all of that. Difficulties attracting people to come and park in the high street sometimes where they can't go, but also now this kind of spree of shoplifting that's going on. We've got the chairwoman of John Lewis this morning saying that she wants a royal commission set up to save the high street from this looting epidemic.
It's a huge problem. Let's be quite clear about it. You got major supermarkets now putting almost behind bars, as it were, coffee and basic foodstuffs, because there's such an epidemic of looting. And that's obviously a consequence of the situation we find ourselves economically. There's a huge craze going on. It's a real big issue. It's already very difficult for shops and retailers to survive in the high street, because so many people are buying online these days. And why wouldn't you? It's much more efficient for lots and lots of people. I think that it's hard. We've had lots and lots of governments, David Cameron and even Brown, trying to set up commissions to try and deal with the problems and to tackle them. But in the end, your listeners, our viewers this morning, we're all the shoppers, all of us, you and me. And whatever decisions we take have an impact. And if we feel that it's an easier, more convenient way to shop, we'll take our business elsewhere. So it's really hard for retailers. And I don't know what the answer will be. Nobody's really cracked it. I think offering very exciting experiential experiences is what it's partly about. Great value for money is also what it's partly about. But if I can buy something which hasn't had also the surplus costs of taxes and my parking and sort of getting from A to B and all the rest of it, then why wouldn't I? It's much cheaper.
Yeah, absolutely right. And what about the looting problem, though? Because it does seem to be something that we have to keep a check on, because you've seen, as I have in America, what's happened in parts of the States where you can basically not be done for shoplifting in San Francisco now really at all. So shops are being completely ransacked on a regular basis.
Yeah, if they get cleared out, not only that, it's super dangerous for other shoppers and the people who are working behind the counters. And you know, I think in this country there's an unofficial sort of police situation where if it's under 200 quid's worth of value, they basically don't prosecute. And if you have to turn that into a zero tolerance policy, that's great. And a lot of your viewers and listeners would say, why don't we do that? But the answer to that is that puts even greater pressure on the police service to go out and look after every single one of these cases. And they've got so many different competing pressures right now, they're having to make a decision about what's the most #1 priority. And so every decision we make in one area has consequences for other areas as well. And that's, I think, part of the problem we're finding right now with the country as we find it, is that there's an awful lot of fragility around. You take one decision here, it has an impact on another area there. And it's a difficult time to govern, let's be very clear, but it's a particularly difficult time. We saw it in Oxford Street, we saw TikTok being used as a convening tool by a bunch of complete idiots to go up onto Oxford Street, doing it all on live streaming, hoping that they're seen as cool. But it's a really very serious problem and is doing nothing to attract people to the high street.
No, exactly right. George, good to see you. Thanks very much.